Who's your I know he's pure evil but can't prove it person?
I feel like I am this for at least 10 people, but for me, Mr. Beast. My wife also agrees. It's the Beast.
I used to work security at a casino. One night I was patrolling, rounded a bank of machines, and came face to face with a guy who immediately spiked my adrenaline and triggered my fight-or-flight reflex. There was something in his eyes that evoked pure terror. Other officers reported similar reactions. No idea who the guy was because I wasn't about to contact him unnecessarily, but he lingers in my mind as my mental image of sheer evil.
I had this reaction to a guy in a post office once. Everything was totally normal until this man walked in. I took one look at him and just immediately felt pure fear, grabbed my package and hustled out of there. Didn't breathe easy again until I had driven well away. Some people just give off absolutely rank vibes.
People with psychopathy talk about how they know they're not like others, but they learn ways to blend in and pretend to be normal. And, of course, how they have no empathy or remorse for their actions, even though they know they should. I wonder if psychopaths are like the folklore origins of vampires. They might be able to join a crowd, but people will pick up on something being off and dangerous with them.
Quentin Tarantino. He just oozes piece of shit. Love a couple of his movies, but I bet he's done some nefarious stuff.
Put it this way, if I heard that someone Hollywood famous had been convicted of violently murdering sex workers, Tarantino would jump to my mind instantly. Ballerina Farm's husband. Don't know her name, don't know her husband's name, but that man is not a safe person.
I know this is more or less a prejudiced mindset on my part, but I am very wary of friendly Mormons. They just feel very off to me, and I can't explain why. Just something in me is telling me to not associate, or to just run because something feels off. I'm not entirely sure if I'm even explaining this well, so apologies in advance for everything in this comment. I'd apply this to any overly friendly religious folk. I went to church with a religious friend a couple of times as a teenager, and every single person I spoke to felt weirdly friendly. All very surface-level friendliness and fake.
This guy that works at a bookstore in my hometown that I do not trust. Dude is conventionally attractive and has never been rude, but every time we made eye contact, alarm bells started ringing. Like just dead behind the eyes, and every cell in my body starts screaming at me to get as far away as fast as I can. I haven't been back to that store in years because of that feeling.
The Rock. Everything he says and does comes off as way too calculated and inauthentic.
There was a girl in my computer modeling class in high school who just gave off odd vibes. At first, I thought it was the way she dressed, all black, spikes and chains, Wiccan symbols. But I knew others that dressed the same, so it wasn't that. A year later, she set fire to the jewelry section of a Walmart just because. Joel Osteen definitely. Everyone knows about Kenneth Copeland and his evilness. But Osteen looks like he's hiding stuff.
That smile is unhinged and diabolical.
A local owner of a video game store who ran for local office was charged with sexual assault of a minor. He was acquitted of these charges. I am the person who reported it to the police. I know the proof that I saw. Unfortunately, the most significant pieces of evidence were not allowed to be discussed in the trial. I don't know exactly how that all happened, as witnesses were not privy to anything except our own testimony. But I am completely sure he had sex with this girl as a child. A lot of judges in small counties are really bad people and have way too much power.
Used to work with a mid-40s substitute teacher who had Ned Flanders vibes, but he made me very uncomfortable. If you are randomly introduced in an episode of Law & Order SVU, I would immediately turn to my husband and say, "That's him, that's the guy for sure." The classroom fish was near death and he happily volunteered to put it in a napkin and step on it. And that was after I'd already been creeped out by him. I saw him waiting with his kids at a bus stop, so I roughly know where he lives, but there is something that makes me have major fear of him.
Ellen DeGeneres' humor towards her guests reminded me a lot of how the girls in my middle school would bully me for being the weird kid.
Yes, you put a great finger on it. It's teenage bully behavior.
Lawyer here. About 50% of lawyers I go up against.
Also a lawyer here. I entirely agree. At least in my line of business, most of these people are the greediest, most narcissistic people you will ever meet, all being disguised as marketing. You'd have to mess me up to put my face on a billboard with a stupid slogan.
This reminds me of a quote from a book by Patrick O'Brien. I do not say that all lawyers are bad, but I do maintain that the general tendency is bad. standing up in a court for whichever side has paid you, affecting warmth and conviction, and doing everything you can to win the case, whatever your private opinion may be, will soon dull any fine sense of honor. The mercenary soldier is not a valued creature, but at least he risks his life, whereas these men merely risk their next fee.
We've proved it. They just won't prosecute him.
I love how there's no name, but everyone knows exactly who you're talking about. Well played.
My sister's husband. He killed her. I just can't prove it.
That one coworker who's always overly nice to the boss, but somehow everyone else gets in trouble around them?
I knew a woman who was Mormon. Not relevant to the story, just was a huge part of her personality, so I'm including it. She was a coworker of mine who was pretty well liked. She was soft-spoken, wore long skirts and blouses, laughed easily, just overall put out the epitome of a kind, innocent woman. And then she told us about how a stray cat got in her house, she may have claimed it was rabid, and her husband got his shotgun and blew it away in the foyer. Its blood and guts and brain matter were everywhere, and it took forever to clean up, according to her. And she laughed and laughed and laughed when she told the story.
My coworker, who was always extremely friendly, but somehow every conversation leaves you feeling like you accidentally signed a contract. Trust your gut and don't let them get closer.
The coworker who CCs your manager on an email about a minor typo but accidentally forgets to include you on the invite for crucial project meetings. They always use that sickly sweet corporate HR voice, but you just know they would step over your dead body for a 2% raise. Dr. Phil McGraw. He's not a licensed psychologist anymore, but given the way he does business and ran that show of his, I strongly doubt he's ever really helped anyone other than himself, his wallet, or the pockets of his wife, and everyone he worked with.
Yes, he's always rubbed me the wrong way. I used to watch just to yell at the TV for a while there. But the real clue, to me, is the weird Stepford wife thing going on and the insane codependency of her or their relationship, all of which is clearly unhealthy and quite likely clinically significant to a diagnosable psychological issue or a coercively controlling relationship, or both, plus a personality disorder thrown in for fun. And people look to him for mental health and relationship advice? Not to mention that his version of therapy or advice is actually trauma-inducing public humiliation on already damaged, vulnerable, or at-risk people. He has to be evil, because he couldn't do what he does if he possessed any compassion or empathy for others.
The last episode one ever watched of him was when he accused his guest of exploiting vulnerable people for money, and the guest was like, "But that's what you do as well," and Phil promptly got him kicked out. Like, that guest was a total piece of shit for making homeless people fight for money, but at least he knew what a scumbag he was, unlike Phil. And there is something so cathartic about a truly horrible human who admits they are horrible, calling out someone who is terrible but pretends they're not. One of my aged care clients I care for, he's 90, and the way he corners you and traps you in his room or grabs your wrist, I know he's one evil bastard. No friends and no family. My sister started training as a CNA in a nursing home. It's an education pathway in my country, and she quit 6 months into her contract because they kept putting her on pericare for an 80-year-old man who kept making inappropriate comments and trying to grab at her. She was only 17. I've heard so many horror stories. I sincerely believe that if they had all men's and all women's rest homes, there'd be fewer staffing shortages in women's homes.
Yeah, those people freak me out, even the elderly.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. It really helps. Subscribe for more, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next one.